What are the best games a dad can play with his kids? Let me describe what I mean by that. Imagine Gradient, where on one side are kids' board games, and on the other side are board games for game hobbyists and enthusiasts. Now, somewhere in the middle would be family board games, the kind of games that don't rely too heavily on reading, things that adults can enjoy, but definitely things that adults are going to want to play with their kids. What I'm talking about are games that are somewhere over here. Games that are just a little bit more involved, that a dad would want to take and play with his own friends, but also games that a dad would want to play with his kids. Now, does it have to be a dad? No, it can be a mom, of course. My channel is called BoardGameDad, so I'm thinking about what I can play with my kids and whether or not you're a dad or a mom or whatever, a grandparent. These are just games that are a little bit more involved than family board games. My name is Ben and this is BoardGameDad. This video, along with others, can be watched on my web app, theperfectboardgame.com, where you can check out board game reviews while you watch the video. Now, this one in particular is the consequence of a live feed that I did earlier this week where I asked people what are the best board games for dads? And I came up with this list and I've modified it a little bit more after hearing some feedback. If you're interested in that, make sure to subscribe to this channel so that you can get notifications whenever I do live videos and you can weigh in on my top 10 lists. And by the way, if you're more interested in the games that are in the middle of that gradient there, go ahead and check out my other YouTube video where I talk about the top 10 family board games. Number 10 on this list, I was looking for a game that was thematically very involved, very interesting, something that kids would enjoy playing, but also something that adults would play without kids, and yet something that's not too complicated. That's often the case with very thematic games. They end up being too complicated, and kids have trouble getting on board with that. Now, the game that I found that satisfies that criteria is Dinogenics. Dinogenics is a worker placement game where on your turn you are collecting sets of cards in order to build dinosaurs using their blueprints, using their DNA in your park. You have to build enclosures in your park. Kind of looks a little bit like Agricola, but with dinosaurs instead of cattle. At the end of every round, you're going to do a rampage check to see if any of your dinosaurs get dangerous. And you got to make sure you feed your carnivores, and you got to make sure every dinosaur is happy in its enclosure. If it's not, it can cause damage to your park, which can have a spiraling effect. Once there's damage done, fences get open, dinosaurs get free, and visitors can even die, having a negative impact on your victory score at the end of the game. I think Dinogenics hits that sweet spot where it's intuitive enough that anybody can play, but complicated enough and interesting enough that it's very engaging for adults. Now, there are event cards and dinosaur cards that depend on reading, and you can help your kids with that. All of the buildings that come out has symbols on them, though, so you can possibly interpret the symbols, and it doesn't depend too heavily on reading, which I think makes this a better alternative than another dinosaur game called Dinosaur Island, which is a lot more complicated, even though the theme is about the same. Dinogenics, I think, is a better alternative if you're hoping on playing with your kids. The great thing about number 9 is it's a game that anybody can play. This is a game you cannot get wrong. Gameplay is so simple. The game is Overboss. And the objective of the game is to build a dungeon of all of these little kind of 1980s video game graphics. And to get the highest score, you want to satisfy the objectives on each tile that you draft. So, on your turn, all you do is you pick a dungeon tile and you put it into your dungeon. So you've got different criteria, and then with each tile you're going to get a little boss monster that you place in the tile as well, and you're trying to satisfy criteria for them too. So it's not hard to play, but it can be a little bit puzzly as you're weighing how many points each thing can get you, okay? You know, what is the optimal tile to put into your dungeon is what you're asking yourself. But easy to play and easy to satisfy everyone at the table. Overboss. Number 8 is a very streamlined, very satisfying tactile engine builder game. It's the game Gizmos. And in Gizmos, the objective is to make very effective gizmos that will give you victory points. Each gizmo, though, has an effect on building gizmos, and the effects can be chained together. So what I mean by engine building is that you have several gizmos that you've built during the course of the game at some point, and when you take one action, you trigger another action from one of your gizmos. And when you do that action, it triggers yet another action, and then that allows you to build a certain card. And when you build that card, it triggers another bonus. And so whoever can build like a really effective chain reaction of gizmos is probably going to be the one that wins the game. A lot of fun to play an engine builder, and what I like about this one is there's not a lot of upkeep at all. This is pure game, not hard to play, not hard to teach, gizmos. The next game is a little bit more cutthroat, but can be a lot of fun to play with kids. It's the game Evolution. In Evolution, each player is playing animals, and each animal has traits to help it survive, because at the end of every round, each animal needs to be fed in order to survive into the next round, okay? So you put your traits on your animal cards, and then during the feeding phase, you utilize those traits in order to get food, and if your animals survive because they all get food, another round starts. Now that's not the whole game, of course, because there is a catch. If there's ever a food shortage, or if someone just wants to, you can play a carnivore card. And a carnivore card doesn't eat food from the watering hole in the middle of the table. The carnivore card eats other players' animals. And that's where the fun comes in. Not only do you want to get traits that will help you get food, but you want to get traits that will protect you from the carnivores. So maybe one of your animals has a hard shell and the climbing trait, but then you've got a carnivore that also has the climbing trait. So it comes after you, and then you've got the warning call, which alerts the animals on your board that the carnivore is coming. It's just a lot of fun. It's a lot of take that, though. Oh, I've got the carnivore card. Well, I've got the climbing card. Well, I've got the climbing card. Well, I've got the warning call. Well, I've got the ambush. You know, it can be fun. But if anybody's going to take things personally, if anybody doesn't like being attacked, this is not a game you want to play. It is a little bit more cutthroat, but fun. But very fun, very easy. Evolution. Number 6 might be my kids' current favorite. We play this one over and over again. It is called Mind Management. Mind Management is an asymmetrical game where two sides have different roles. One side is a secret agent, and they have a screen that blocks off their board from the rest of the players. And what they're doing is they're planning moves through a city. And the city is a square grid, and they're not telling their opponents where they are at any time. The opponents are like rogue agents, and what they're trying to do is hunt down the agency who's hiding by moving around the square grid and asking for hints about where the agent could be hiding. So they're asking things like, have you been to any fountains? And if they've been to a fountain, the agent puts a footprint on the map to indicate that, yes, they've been to the fountain at that location. When we play this game, the kids love being the agent. They love trying to outsmart me. In fact, we rarely switch roles, in fact. We just play it over and over again with them trying to outsmart me. We love it. And there's two versions of the game. There is a simpler game, and then there's the expert game, which adds a lot more complexity. Excellent game to scale very well. Mind Management. Number 5 is more of an abstract game, but it has such a great mechanic. It's the game 5 Tribes. And the mechanic that I love so very much is the Mancala mechanic, which if you're familiar with the game Mancala, on your turn, you pick up pieces from the board. These are meeples in this case. So if you pick up 4 meeples, we'll say, your move can be to drop off a meeple at each space along the way. So you can move up to 4 when you have 4 meeples. You're dropping one off, dropping it off, dropping it off. The last meeple you place needs to be placed in a space with other meeples of the same color. And when you do that, you get to perform the action of that meeple color. So the blue meeples do one thing, and the red meeples do something else, and the green does something else. Different ones. And so really in the game, what you're trying to do is find optimal moves. Let's see. I want to do a green action. Is there anywhere on the board where I can pick up green meeples and drop them off? Let's see. Oh, here we go. I can pick up this one, move it off, da-da-da. And not only do you get the action of the meeple color that matches, you also get the action of the space on the board. So I guess I really like this because the whole game is just hunting for good moves. You're just hunting for good moves. It is very strategic. And it can be even more strategic when you play by the full set of rules, because first player is something players bid for. All right? At the beginning of every round, you bid for first player, and that is something I cut from the game when I play with my kids. When I play with my older child, actually, my 8-year-old, we just alternate who goes first. So be it, that's how we play. Anyway, not very hard to teach at all. Great reference guide for what the meeples do and what the spaces on the board do. That's why I like it so much. 5 tribes. Number 4 is a game that does something I love in family board games: simultaneous gameplay. No turns, just everyone playing at the same time. It plays so swiftly. It's the game My City. My City is a legacy city building game. Now, by legacy, I mean every player has their own player board, and after every single game, they're going to be changing it by placing stickers on the board, and in subsequent games, they're going to be revealing new rules and new objectives. So this is a game that has a lot of replay value. It's designed to be played all the way through, several chapters, and then it's done. Although every player board does have an alternate side which is designed to be played over and over again. Now, gameplay is people are going to take turns being the person who draws a polynomial building tile, and then everybody else draws the exact same tile from their own set, and they all place it on their board. After every tile has been placed, the next player picks one, and everybody repeats over and over again until the whole board is covered with these tiles. Now, the way that you win is by getting victory points by covering rocks in your terrain and keeping trees revealed, as well as satisfying other victory conditions, like which buildings are placed next to each other. This is a game very easy to teach, very quick to play, and it's engaging for adults and kids. The game My City. Number 3 is a game that I put way high on the list because, again, it just has an excellent execution of theme. It's Freshwater Fly, and it's a game where players are competing to go fishing. On your turn, you can do one of two things. You can either cast a line or you can reel in a fish. And the way that you do that is by drafting a die. Now, the die is going to have an impact on where you can cast into the river, and you have certain objectives about what kinds of fish you want to catch, so you're trying to be strategic there. And then when you're reeling in a fish, you get bonus points based on how you reel or where your reel lands during the reeling process. Fish that are more difficult to reel give you more victory points, and then smaller fish, they give you fewer victory points, as they should. This game does have a lot of luck, and I like that because it's a game about fishing, so you expect luck. But there's also ways you can mitigate for the luck using special skills and bonuses. It's just a great game, all around, fun theme, the game Freshwater Fly. Number 2 is a game that I actually put on my best family board games. Although it was number 10 on that list because it's a little too complicated, I still think it's an excellent game for both adults and children, a fun game to play with dad. It's the game Via Nebula. Via Nebula has a pick up and deliver mechanic. What you're trying to do is get victory points by building cards. The cards require resources, and the resources are on a shared map. Anybody can access them, but in order to bring them to your building sites, you must clear a path through the clouds. This is a beautiful game with excellent components. It's very easy to teach, and it's a lot of fun to play with a lot of very thoughtful decisions to be made. The game Via Nebula. Number 1 is just an all-around great game. It's the game Role Player. Role Player takes place in a fantasy realm of Dungeons and Dragons and dungeon crawlers, but instead of having daring adventures on a quest, in this game, the whole objective is to build your character. And you win by satisfying the objectives for the character's class and race. So an orc warrior needs a certain alignment and different strength, wisdom, and charisma attributes. This is about the idea of the game. Now you do this by drafting dice and placing them on your character's map. Every die that you place adds to the character's attributes and allows you to perform some sort of action to help you rearrange and modify the alignment and the other attributes about the character. Once everybody's character sheet is complete, the game is over and the person with the most victory points wins when you add up all of the points from objectives as well as any points from skills and equipment bought during the course of the game. So Thematically, I think this really comes through. It's a very clever idea, and the dice placing mechanic works really well. This is a game that's very comparable to Sagrada, if you're familiar with that game, but it has a much more engaging theme. So I put it at number 1 for the top 10 games that a dad can play with his kids. Hopefully you've enjoyed this list. If you have any recommendations or anything you'd like to contribute, please do so in the comments. Thank you for watching. See you next time.